Thank you. There will be many other nights like this. I'll be singing here for someone new. There will be other songs to sing, another fall, another spring, but no, there'll never be another you. There will be lots of lips to kiss. They won't thrill me like yours used to do. I may dream a million dreams, how can they come true? 'Cause there will never ever be another you. Wright. Simerly. Well, there are many other nights like this. I'll be singing here for someone new. With me many songs to sing, another fall, another spring. There'll never be another you. There's lots of lips that I can kiss. They won't thrill me like yours used to do. I may dream a million dreams, how can they come true? 'Cause there will never ever be. There will never ever be. There will never ever be another you. Thank you very much, and welcome to the history of jazz as we see it, which could be very dangerous. But I don't want to delay any further. I'm going to turn this over to our professor on trombone, Rick Simerly, and we'll get going here.
Thank you. You know, it's very difficult to talk about the origins of jazz because it's very complicated. I think most historians agree that it was born in New Orleans, but some disagree and say it was popping up all over the South around the turn of the century. But at the turn of the century, New Orleans was the cultural center of the United States. It was probably more diverse and had more concerts and musical events happening than even Chicago and New York. And there are several contributing factors to the development of jazz. It sort of evolved from probably a social situation where it was created by African Americans, and at that time, of course, there was a lot of discrimination, and on the social ladder, I think African Americans were at the bottom of the ladder, and we had Creoles and Creoles of color that were also, the discriminatory codes of 1892 put them on the same level as African Americans. So they had to create their own music. They weren't school musicians, and there were several opportunities for them to play. A lot of employment opportunities for musicians at that time in New Orleans. One was a red light district outside of New Orleans. There was an alderman in New Orleans by the name of Sidney Story, and he had the bright idea that said, prostitution is so bad in New Orleans, we'll just have a district outside of New Orleans and make it legal, and that will get it off the streets of New Orleans. And much to his chagrin, they nicknamed it Storyville, and it was the red light district of New Orleans. And so we had a lot of employment opportunities. There was a huge African-American population there, and also Creole population, Creoles of color. And at that time, at the turn of the century, believe it or not, in Storyville, there were over 200 bordellos, as they called it, and you could buy a blue book for 25 cents that gave the name of all the madams and all the places of pleasure you could visit. And yes, and there were also over 2,000 prostitutes, 30 professional gamblers. It was called the wicked red light district of New Orleans. And there were a lot of opportunities for musicians. Jelly Roll Morton started there. A lot of them were just piano players. But a lot of these musicians, they had small bands too for dances. And a lot of these musicians were not school musicians. So that's where improvisation started, and just making up music. And music that influenced that beginning of jazz that was popular at the time was ragtime. That was a really big popular music, especially with cakewalks at the turn of the century. And we had early beginnings of gospel music and spirituals and the blues. That was very big. Also, concert bands in New Orleans and brass bands were very popular. So in New Orleans, we had these brass bands that actually were representatives of what you would call fraternal organizations, social clubs, a lot of African American social clubs, and they all had a brass band or some sort of band that marched, even including woodwinds, that would have these cutting contests. You know, one band would march into the territory of another band, and they would start playing and see who could outplay each other, and a lot of times they just put down their horns and start fighting. Break out in fisticuffs. But if you belong to one of these fraternal organizations, much like the Shriners, you can think of the Shriners and shrine bands today. A lot of these fraternal organizations had their own bands. And if you belong to one of these bands, there was one thing, there's one thing that they would guarantee you, and that was a good send-off when you die. So we're going to give you a funeral no one will forget. So they would have these bands play. And we're going to play a song for you right now. This, on the way to the cemetery, it was always a slow, mournful, somber time called a dirge. And then when they got to the cemetery and on the way back, they had a celebration of the person's life. There was a band in front, and behind there was something called the second line. And those second line people would dance, and it was made up of family members or even young children who were being tutored by some of those musicians. So we're going to give you a taste of that right now. We're going to do the dirge up to the cemetery, and you're going to hear the celebration or the wake when we come back. This is Just a Closer Walk with Thee.
Thank you. That's a lot of fun. I've been asked to talk about the big band era. And, I don't like that saying that big bands are dead. I think big bands are just too expensive. If you take all of what we're making up here this weekend and multiply it times 18 instead of, it gets kind of expensive. That's a joke. But no, really, 18, 20 members of a band, put them on the road, it was very expensive. And I know we're all jazz fans here, so we don't need a big lecture in the greatest names, starting, say, with Fletcher Henderson or Duke Ellington or Count Basie. I mean, those people stand for themselves. I think as a player myself, and from my era, I personally have had a chance to play with a lot of the ghost bands, not the originals, but several of the ghost bands, and they're still out and about, and the Dorseys and folks like that. Actually, Rick's played some with Woody Herman's band. When Mundell comes out, he played with the original Tonight Show band in New York, as well as played guitar with Benny Goodman's big band. So several of us have had unique opportunities like that. The bands aren't dead. I don't think any of the eras of jazz history are dead. They just keep evolving decade after decade. One of the interesting things about big band jazz that I find interesting as an educator in my day life, along with all of these gentlemen, every one of whom teaches in their day lives, when a student starts to study jazz, like we did years ago, they tend to concentrate on two things. They'll take jazz improvisation classes and learn how to take a tune and make it their own. And then if they play trumpet, trombone, or saxophone, or one of the rhythms, invariably in one of the hundreds of jazz schools in this country and in Europe, they will play in a big band, which is maybe a little bit ironic because there aren't very many big bands left that are at least touring. So really, when you hear that term, I think there have been three types of big bands. Either you dance to the big bands, back in the 30s and into the 40s, or you listen to their concerts, like the Ellington Orchestra, or later on Stan Kenton's orchestra, or even later than that, the more contemporary ensembles like those of Buddy Rich and Woody Herman in Woody's later days. Some of the bands crossed over and did everything. They'd have two completely different books. In Woody Herman's later days, the band was concert-oriented, and in the 70s in particular, if there was a top 40 tune on the radio, like a Melissa Manchester tune, somebody, Bill Stapleton or somebody, would take that melody off the AM pop radio station and write it for Woody's band, and they'd be playing rock and roll with the big band. But we all know that Woody also had a dance band book. And people would dance to the band. So, and the third type of band is that which we've all had an opportunity to play in that are still around. You might call them a jazz orchestra, but they serve the purpose of specifically backing a singer when they might come to town. And rather than tour, the band will be put together, have one or two rehearsals, learn the charts, and then back up a soloist. So they're still around, and you can see anywhere from 8 to 18 to 20 players, in a concert setting, pulling up the rear, so to speak, and highlighting a vocalist or an instrumental soloist. So, but those are really the three types in the way I see them, and what I still get to do as a player, especially playing on multiple woodwinds. But one of my favorites, without question, to this day, and the sound, and his band just had such an influence on everybody in the world of jazz in the late 30s and into the 40s, is the great Benny Goodman. You guys play the pickups. 1, 2, 1. Yeah, it's, we all wish we could have played with those that we didn't get a chance to, but thank goodness we can listen to them, and it's always a pleasure to hear players that have such a legacy of their playing, both in recording and those of us that have gotten to hear them live, whether they soloed or played with other groups. So without further ado, let me please bring out Mr. Mundell Lowe, who in his own right and playing with others is a major history in jazz. Mundell?
Good afternoon. I worked a lot of times with Benny Goodman. As a matter of fact, I quit 3 times and he fired me twice. So he was an interesting man. But in our recording, he introduced me to a new tempo of a piece that I always thought of as a ballad. It's called Darn That Dream, but he apparently had played this in a Broadway show called Swingin' a Dream, and it was a nice little slightly rhythm thing. Why don't we get Maddy up here and she and I will do this for you. It's called Darn That Dream.
This is great to see Benny Goodman introduce this to Mundell, and Mundell introduced it to me this way, so now it's a whole new way of doing this song. Darn that dream I dream each night. You say you love me and you hold me tight, but when I awake you're out of sight. Darn that dream, darn your lips, darn your eyes, they lead me high above the moonlit skies. Then I tumble out of paradise. Oh, darn that dream, darn that one-track mind of mine. Can't understand why you don't care. Just to change the mood I'm in, I'd welcome a nice old nightmare. Darn that dream, bless it too. Without that dream I never would have you. But it haunts me 'cause it can't come true. Oh, darn that dream. Darn that one-track mind of mine. Cannot understand why you don't care. Just to change the mood I'm in, I'd welcome a nice old nightmare. Darn that dream, bless it too. Without that dream I never would have you. But it haunts me 'cause it can't come true. Darn Thank you.
So that's some vocals, coming in with big bands. By the way, a lot of the big bands had both a male and female singer. Then there was another shift in New York, late 1939, 1940, with what we call bebop jazz, and the likes of Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, and others. They tended to take a lot of the same tunes and increase the tempos. Various different rumors floated. Some said, the beboppers wanted to get away from the big band tradition because they really didn't have enough solo time in a big band arrangement. And others said, well, they wanted to get away from that because they wanted to maybe weed out some of the musicians who really couldn't get around on their horns that well. So, but there was definitely a shift in the music in the 40s, through the mid-40s, and even almost into the early 50s with bebop music. A very, very fast-paced rhythms that ended quite abruptly in the ends of phrases. For instance, if I were to scat sing a bebop tune, I might end it with bebop. 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 And lots of times these rhythms were done on the drums. So there were various tunes, many different types of tunes. These guys were playing at a place in Harlem called Minton's Playhouse. And they were playing it in places like Three Deuces, Black Onyx. They were playing down on 52nd Street, now called Swing Street if you go to New York City. But there was definitely a shift in the music. Sometimes you couldn't hear the melody any longer. Once the melody had been played, then the solos began, and sometimes you really had to listen very, very intently to hear the melody being played. But if you listen closely enough, if you listen to enough bebop, although these wild solos are going on, you can hear the melody. But you have to listen for it. So at any rate, we'd like to do a tune entitled Yardbird Suite by Charlie Parker.
All right, the decade of the 1950s saw kind of a reaction to this frenetic, fast-paced bebop music that came about in the 40s. I think it was 1949. Miles Davis did a record called "Birth of the Cool," which Gil Evans was involved in, and you had what was called the West Coast sound, which was a lot more a sweeter sound, more melodic. It still had a lot of the bebop vocabulary, but it was a little bit easier to listen to, and people like Stan Getz were involved in that. And then towards the end of the decade, we ended up with what jazz historians refer to as modal music, exemplified by an album that Miles Davis did, I think in '59, somewhere in that neighborhood, called "Kinda Blue." And so we're going to do a tune from that actually features the bass playing the melody. And this would have been Paul Chambers in the Miles Davis group, and this is called "So What." Thank you. It's a real honor for me now to have Joe Byrd come out on the bandstand and play the bass.
This is a piece that's been around for a while. I don't know who wrote it, but whoever wrote it did a good job. It's called Gone with the Wind, having nothing to do with Margaret Mitchell. Now, who's Margaret Mitchell? She wrote Gone with the Wind. in view of what we're seeing out the windows, we're going to play Let It Snow.
But the fire's so delightful. Since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. And it doesn't show signs of stopping, so I brought some corn for popping. The lights are way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, how I hate waiting out in the dark. But if you really hold me tight, all the way home I'll be warm. The fire's slowly dying. My dear, we're still goodbying. Long as you love me so, let it snow. Let it snow. Let it snow. Yeah, but we don't care. I'd like to stay snowed in with these guys for about a week. What do you think? Can you do the Samba de Orpheus thing? Yeah. Put that up here for you. Yeah. There you go.
We have a bass player fella. His name is Joe Byrd. I've known him for a long time, and he's really a good one. Anyway, he's going to play a piece called Orpheus de Samba, isn't it? Samba? Yeah, yeah. I have to learn that piece one of these days. Joe Byrd.
I don't know what's up, Monday. We thought we'd ask you if you wanted to hear one song before we do our finish. What do you want to hear with this great group of guys up here? My Funny Valentine? A-Train. Hi. I tell you what, well, let's do both. Let's do Funny Valentine and A-Train. How about that? Okay? Is that all right? You look like the jury sitting there. Come on, get up. You got to get to work. Funny Valentine at F minor? Okay? All right. They sat down again. My funny Valentine, sweet comic Valentine, you make me smile with my heart. Your looks are laughable, unphotographable, yet you're my favorite work of art. Is your figure less than Greek? Is your mouth a little weak when you open it to speak? Are you smart? Don't change your hair for me. Not if you care for me. Stay, little Valentine. Won't you stay? Each day is Valentine's Day. Must take the A train to go to Sugar Hill up in Harlem. And if you miss the A train, then you miss the quickest way to Harlem. Come on in, hurry, won't you see the train a-coming? Don't you feel the wheels are humming? Oh, boy, on the A train, and you catch the quickest way to Harlem. Todd Wright. Mundell Lowe. You must take the A train if you go to Sugar Hill in Harlem. If you miss the A train, you miss the quickest way to Harlem. Come on and hurry, don't you see the train a coming? Don't you feel the wheels are humming? Oh, boy, on the A train, and you'll catch the quickest way to Harlem. Aboard on the A train, and you'll catch the quickest way to Harlem. Get on the A train. Oh boy, they are just tremendous, aren't they? Woo! What a way to spend a Saturday afternoon. We're really finished, but we you want to hear one more? Do you want to hear one more while we're here? I mean, who wants to go play in the snow? You know, let's do. Okay, we were going to do a song that is a Charles Mingus tune. We're going to do Centerpiece, right? And now, you want Tom to? Okay. Well, all right, we're going to bring Tom Hildreth back out here. Didn't he do a great job? This is and isn't it a treat, our first time ever to have Mr. Joe Byrd with us for our jazz festival? Wow. Woo. And he will be back this evening. What about this tune? Where did it come from? All these jazz educators up here. Was it Harry Sweets Edison? Okay, he wrote it? How did Charles Mingus get involved in this thing? You don't know? Wow. He just copied it. Okay, well, that happens a lot, but that's okay. And I hope you've enjoyed our afternoon. This is very off the cuff. It's just what musicians do. And where they're this good, you just let them roll. Okay. Kick it. The more I'm with you, pretty baby, the more I feel my love release. Building all my dreams around you, happiness will never cease. Nothing's any good without you. baby, you're my centerpiece. I'll buy a house or garden somewhere along a country road of peace. A little cottage on the outskirts where we can really find relief. Nothing's any good without you. Oh, baby, you're my centerpiece. Todd Wright. Rick the Plumber Simerly. Phil Thompson. Mundell Lowe. Vince Lewis. Hildreth. The more I'm with you, pretty baby, the more I feel my love increase. I'm building all my dreams around you. Happiness will never cease. Nothing's any good without you. Baby, you're my centerpiece. I buy a house or cottage somewhere along a country road of peace. little cottage on the outskirts. We really find relief. Nothing's any good without you. Baby, you're my centerpiece. Baby, you're my centerpiece. Oh, yeah. Is this a great afternoon or what? Let's hear it for all of them. Woo, yeah. And we have some great CDs outside. Joe Byrd, Mundell Lowe, Vince Lewis, Rick Simerly. So please take a look at the CDs. Take some of these lovely, lovely thoughts home with you and some of their great music. And have a great afternoon. We'll see you this evening. Thank you so much.